Hello, everyone. I am Mindy Flanagan, your host of Uncomplicating HR, episode number I don't know how many. But thank you for joining us today. Instead of Uncomplicating HR being a very specific HR topic, and I take the opportunity to showcase talent on our team, I wanted to take a moment to showcase talent that's within my networking arena. I am joined today by Erin Lee with Leaders Rising Network. It's the leadership development and culture company, hence where there's the intersection with HR. And Erin and I have had the pleasure of getting to know each other over the last several years, because when you live in Richmond, Virginia, there's this thing called Twisted Richmond. And eventually, if you're in like anything having to do with HR adjacent, you'll all start networking over the top of one another. He has deep expertise on leadership and culture work, and since we are all about HR done differently, which actually means create places to work so employees want to come and stay, he and I could chat all day, but we're going to try and be disciplined. I want Erin to introduce himself for a moment, and then he and I are going to jump into, wait for it, why people still hate HR. Erin, thank you for joining me today. Your turn. Tell everybody what they need to know about you and Leaders Rising.
It's a good conversation. I'm excited to dive into this one with you today, Mindy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
I'm not just a twisted Richmonder, but a lifelong Richmonder, which adds more
that's right.
and more.
I forgot you're an original, and there aren't that many of you.
Yes, layers of complexity and
lots of transplants
there.
Here. Yeah, that's true.
But it's a great place to live. It's a great place to work, and I've enjoyed calling it home for the entirety of my life. Raising a family here now, and in every step of my career, I've found the leaders who were great leaders, the leaders who had some areas for improvement. And I always say that wasn't just the ones I was working for. I was fortunate enough to be in a lot of roles in organizations where we had broad networks in connections we were making in the business world, in government, local, state, and federal, in nonprofits, all sectors.
Mm-hmm.
And I always saw the same challenges, and finally reached this point where I said, you know what? I think there's a solution. I've seen enough of the problem. Let's go fix this. And so together with my partners and our team, about half our team is here in Virginia, half in Wisconsin. And
remote work works.
It does. Not without its challenges, but
no. Listen, there's pluses and minuses with everything. Yeah.
There's no one size fits all, and we've had the great fortune to work with companies from Main Street small businesses to Fortune 500 companies. Listen, I say the people issues are the same, the challenges are the same, whether you're developing as a leader in a company of 5 or a company of 5,000. You're still working with a team, and so we have the great fortune of working with folks in all of those sectors and helping them build great, thriving cultures so they can do the world-changing work that they set out to do in the first place.
Yeah, they're kind of critical to a company playing the long game with that great place to work culture. Okay, before we dive into why does everyone still hate HR, based on your introduction of yourself, thank you for the additional information. Do you think it's still true at the heart of all leadership development? Could it possibly be this simple? Because, one of our core values is simplify around here, because, if you want complicated, go talk to an employment law attorney. They could tell you lots of complicated legalese things. I just want to tell you in simple fashion what I think you might need to do and when to do it by when it comes to HR. For your line of work, is it still true that most leadership problems sort of stem back to not determining if that person wanted to lead people in the first place?
That is...
even the small business owners that are like, yeah, I guess I have to have employees. Well, see, now I'm enthusiastic about your leadership skills already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody described this to me this weekend. They said they always had people coming to them asking, hey, how do I get that next promotion?
Mm-hmm.
And he said his feedback was always just do the best job you possibly can in the work that you're doing right now, which in and of itself...
That used to be the prescription. I don't know if it was a good one.
Exactly. There's two different skill sets there. One is the work that you're doing, which you actually have to do less of that work when you start leading people. And leading people is very different than the skill set that you have in your business. And
Well,
that
that's
was one
because
thing
your
I noticed.
customer changes, right? Your customer, I don't think anybody grasps that your customer changes when you have direct reports and you are in a leadership position.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And no one going to school learns how to lead people. They all learn how to be an expert at their craft.
Right.
And so those are skill sets. That's where we focus our time and our energy, because nobody's learned it. I used to think it was unique to a few different industries where I had expertise and background and history. Then I realized it's everybody. Doctors, lawyers, the trades, nobody learns that. And in most cases, I actually wrote about this in The New Generation Leader, my first book, that most of the time you end up cleaning up the messes after the fact because you didn't prepare somebody to take that step into leadership. And so that reluctant leader who's the top performer, that's a big challenge to promote your top performer, because as we just described, they stop being your top performer because their customer shifts and they don't know what they're doing as a
and
leader.
from an HR perspective, I would credit sales managers originally starting this conversation behind who's suited to be leader, who's suited to be in leadership and who's not, and how we define leadership. But, the classic example of we had a high-producing sales manager making big money. So they clearly know what they're doing as a salesperson. So why not make them a sales manager where they give more people headaches and less money? And so, for a long time, I watched that blow up and blow up and blow up. And people are like, that was a waste of time and effort. And now our top performer, not only are they not selling for us anymore, they were miserable in leadership, and now they've left. So 2 whammies. And I don't think we'd have actually, without that for a period of time, I wonder if serious conversations about leadership development would even be taking place at the scale they're taking place right now, in my experience. So would you agree?
I would. A lot of startups are facing that in their growth stages because, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, you can almost predict the kinds of people who rise as the business owner, as the founder, as the business leader. They're the go-getters, the ones who get after it, and slowly over time they amass all of these extra tasks and work. And so they become the bottleneck because they've throttled themselves with all that they have to do and are responsible for, because they're not naturally wired to build the process and the pathway and the playbooks. And it requires both and, which is a very collaborative, culture-centric kind of mindset. But a lot of founders, starters, don't naturally have that, myself included.
Yeah. Well, and some people learn it and evolve and study and change over a period of time, and some just stay stuck in their ways. Well, we can go on and on about leadership development, but the predict thing is what got me thinking about, okay, let's talk about predict and hiring or promoting. But first, let's migrate from predict things with people over to what does that mean for hiring and promoting people to the first thing I wanted to ask you about, for which we were going to have a conversation. Why do people still hate HR from your position? What is your experience? Just so everybody knows, I have been in HR, or a part of it. Like, I started in payroll, but with an HR degree, which, by the way, was personnel at the time. Now I'm really dating myself because that's as long as I've been at this. But that's 1993 to present, right? So, actually 1991, if you count my personnel and labor relations internship over 2 summers. Why do people still hate HR from 1991 to present? What do you think it is? I can't take it. I can take it because sometimes it's fun, but we're still the butt of jokes. There's still corporate HR PTSD floating around everywhere. We're now in a state where there's a whole bunch of labor laws just got passed, and now HR's the bad guy communicating all the information on the labor laws that are changing in Virginia. So I guess I'm telling you, I know why people hate HR, but what do you think?
I think it really comes down to the same dynamics we were just describing with startup founders who slowly take on everything because they aren't process people. In a similar kind of way, HR has amassed multiple different tasks and channels. Some of it because executives have handed things off or delegated to HR. And so HR ultimately wears two hats. One is care for the employees, and one is compliance for the company. And it often feels like those two are running counter to each other.
And compliance is so much more complicated now than it was even just 2 years ago, honestly.
Yes. Yeah. And so when HR is constantly tasked with compliance first, then there's less time for the care component and how do we actually bring more value out of our people. And there's a lot that I think executives have abdicated when it comes to culture and put on HR. Take care of HR, create our engagement committee, make sure people are cared for, entertained, engaged, that they look good, they have the swag, we have the events. You take care of culture and we'll take care of the goals. Is that putting it too bluntly?
Well, no, you're right, but there's humor in this because I've lived these roles, and now I advise with companies trying to figure out if they're going to outsource HR or have an outsourced solution complementing HR in some form internally, which is a really good model. What does all of that look like? But as soon as you say the swag in the events, the hysterical, the reason I was laughing is I've been the HR person that planned the holiday party because, that's a part of culture. But you're still asking me to be the person in the room that says, don't drink any alcohol, don't have any fun, because I have to mitigate risk. And this is sort of what frustrates me on behalf of my profession is how many times have we been set up to execute on a single initiative that had competing priorities, and we got to figure out how to balance both of that in the aspect of what we do. And then the other reason I was chuckling is the amount of, I guess, where I've seen my profession evolve now from where it once was and where I have no patience. Caring for employees does not mean you become an open door psychologist chair of complaints. But that's where the C-suite would often get frustrated with HR. I'm here to help, and you won't have a culture here without me. And all you do is create this open door of people saying, I hate my boss, I hate my job. And we say, oh, I'm sorry, poor you. And then nothing. Nothing really goes from that other than I felt like I had a safe space to go and complain. But it just becomes this, like I said, the psychologist chair of nothing. No progress, no remedies, no move people forward. And so, you get that. And yeah, I understand why CFOs and CEOs get frustrated with HR. But then in fairness, you have to back up and say, did you set them up for success in the first place? So did you know what you were looking for? And to your point, do you understand your culture? So where are you seeing, how are you feeling about HR having the ability to have an on-ramp to get more involved with culture work? And not necessarily where you advise on culture work, but building the people infrastructure that represents the culture. Where are you seeing improvements in that?
I think slowly we're watching companies have an objective view. I think we're a couple of years past the pandemic now at this point, and companies are looking at what resources do we have, who do we have, and there's a changing of the guard as well in HR.
Generationally speaking.
Generational shifts. New people are taking over. I'll take you into one of our clients in particular. Long-standing client we've worked with for a long time. We've empowered and equipped them to have the culture conversations, the leadership development conversations themselves. We've done the train the trainer kind of approach. And they've taken that. They've now taken that as far as they feel they can take that on their own. And so now we're actually moving back in to join them in their comprehensive people culture efforts, where it really is top down. HR
completely top down.
Yeah, HR has a seat through their champions. HR is not directly at the C-suite executive table, but they have a champion at the table. And so they can speak into and support the overarching strategy of the entire organization, which allows them then to bring the best, they can take care of what they need to take care of, scale what they need to scale, focus where they need to focus. And they also have some transitions happening internally, staffing wise, and retirements that they've got to reallocate who does what. We can't do it all. So what's the highest priority? What's actually going to move the needle? And one of the conversations I've been having a lot lately is that moving the needle doesn't necessarily keep doing more. Sometimes moving the needle means a calibration back to a balance. We don't always have to do more and better and lots of things. We need to do the right things in the best way that we can.
Can you talk to technology companies about that? Like, let's not roll things out until they actually work kind of conversation. Speaking of balance.
Wouldn't that be helpful?
Slowing down a little bit. Yes. Things working that we pay for. Yes, that would be nice. Although kudos to Riverside. If they're at all ever paying attention to anything I record, I think you'll agree it's a great platform. It really is.
They are adding a lot of tools and improving processes.
So
but I think
sorry,
that improving the processes goes back to our earlier conversation.
It does.
Thinking about how do we keep getting better? How do we grow? How do we remove the bottleneck and the things that are holding us back? Because we've got to find the time and the people to invest in so that we can build the next leaders that we need to have. If we're constantly trying to do more, we fill our schedule. It looks chaotic if you pull up our schedules, a leader's schedule on any given day. But what we really need is to slow down and invest time in developing people so that we can see even who the candidates might be when we need to promote the next leader.
Man, slow down is hard for people, particularly now. I
It is.
mean, technology changes are dizzying, and as much as I celebrate capitalism, and will always celebrate capitalism, I believe in it as an economic model. I champion it. I love it. But somewhere here in capitalism, there has to be a way that there's a better incentive for all of us to not always play the short game. For the big corporations, It's the short game and shareholder value. And if we got to pay out lawsuits because we did it wrong 15 years from you, well, there's a cost-benefit analysis to that. But I'm more of the long game person. I mean, it's easy for me to say, I'm in this. We're not going to be a public company. I don't have shareholders or even a board of directors to report to. But you could apply that slow down, be a little bit more thoughtful and intentional on the front end to the long-term benefit of those endeavors, I feel like, for any size company. So, but people have a hard time slowing down. They really do. Everybody, I could even tell you as a business owner, an anxiety that exists for me now that didn't exist 10 years ago it's like this nagging, I don't know if it's unjustified, but this nagging worry of I'm no longer paying attention to everything I can because it's not possible to pay attention to everything that I should be paying attention to, or the fear of falling behind when you've spent so many years not being behind, but you're on such an overload right now. You're really fearful, and I think the pace of technology change for me really fuels that anxiety for sure. So. Before we tip over the other thing I want to talk about, which preview for everybody is this thing that I love called the 5 Voices, for which I consider Aaron an expert. You mentioned something. I'm curious about this. For the work you're doing, if HR isn't at that C-suite table, which I would argue in some cases they don't need to be, they do need a champion there. You're finding a common thread with these champions. If HR's not at the table, who is their champion that allows what HR is capable of, current or future, to be of benefit to that organization? Who are you seeing as a champion to HR?
Somebody asked me last week to put into a box what's the organizational structure of the clients we work with, and I said I can't put it into one box because I think every organization is different. And so when you read a headline, you see, well, HR should sit here, HR should sit there, it should look like this, it should look like that. You've got to look at the context of the whole picture. What seats do you have? Who's available? So this client I mentioned, HR sits in with the chief operating officer. So the COO.
Well, it's better than finance. Sorry, finance people. Yeah.
And in some, maybe
There's
finance.
plenty of them that fall under finance because that's where payroll is. And payroll
Yes.
and HR sit in the same sandbox for some good reasons, some not so good reasons.
Well,
but,
and then
yeah.
with HR, if they're in a team or segment of the organization together, then you're going to get probably a more compliance-oriented version of HR. Even with the COO, you may lean a little more compliance, but with this COO in particular, they have a good balance. But wherever you land, however it's organized, I think the key is, again, dialing it in to be the right balance so that you get the right balance of care and compliance. You get the right balance of vision and details. You get the right balance of all of those ingredients of developing people and delivering on the bottom line so that your organization can thrive in the long run, not just the short-term gains, but the long-term investment.
Yep. So there you go. The long game again. All right. So you and I have a mutual friend, Courtney Vaughn. Courtney Vaughn is our fractional integrator. She's been a gift to my organization, but another part of how you and I have layered over the top of each other. And Courtney led an exercise for our leadership team last September during our leadership retreat. It's called the 5 Voices. And I believe she learned about 5 voices from you. I am increasingly around business owners or in CEO groups looking to plan retreats or looking to plan development sessions. And I have floated 5 voices many times. Before 5 voices, I was a big fan of the motivators assessment. It came out of this book called The Culture Works. I met them at Richmond Sherm years ago. I don't even know if they're familiar with them. I feel like it's run its course. In fact, I think the people that wrote The Culture Works actually sold this motivators assessment to somebody else that runs it now. And I feel like it's highly beneficial for me to get to know new employees by understanding what their underlying motivators are. But I think we're going to not necessarily leave that behind, but add to it, getting to understand everyone's mix of voices. So can you tell everybody about 5 voices, and then you and I will have a chat about the value of this exercise?
Absolutely. The 5 voices was created to be a simplified version. You know, a lot of these assessments and tools we all take give us a report, a readout. You may know yourself as a 3 or an eagle, a red, a high D, a low
A TMJ. I always think of TMJ when I think of Myers-Briggs, and then I just feel old when I say it.
Yes.
It's not really TMJ. That's just what I remember.
All these numbers and letters that then require our brains to process, okay, what did I just hear? And then what do I know about you? What I love about the 5 voices is each of the 5 voices is one word that is in itself a description of what the word means.
Really?
And so, as you and I were talking about, I had in my mind from our conversations what your voice order was.
Want to tell everybody what my voice order is? Do you remember?
Nurture, connector, guardian.
There's 5 to choose from, and those are my primary 3. Yes.
And then my
Whatever
top
the other
2
ones
are
are.
the other ones. Pioneer
Interesting.
and creative.
Oh my God, now that
So-
I didn't even know until now that you and I did not have similar voices.
Yes. So that
Okay.
makes us almost opposites, which
It does.
I think is some of the extremities. You know, every part of our lives these days, every headline, every political conversation, everything is oppositional. And the 5 voices helps us to see that our opposition isn't necessarily working against us. It's actually an opportunity to work for us. One of my favorite examples of this, one of the very first teams I ever sat down with and walked through the 5 voices, we finished the description, and one nurturer and one pioneer. And nurturers and pioneers by nature could not be more
And that's
different.
you. Those are your top 2, right? Which one comes first?
A pioneer for me, and then nurturer
Okay.
for you. So that makes us
Right. And then
you know,
you're
we see
also
things-
creative second. So just so everybody
Yes.
knows, the 5 voices are nurturer, connector, pioneer, creative, and guardian, right? Those are the 5. Right?
Those are the 5.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right.
And so this nurturer and pioneer on this team realized, hey, you're a nurturer, I'm a pioneer. That's an opportunity for conflict. But for them, they realized, oh, this is why we get along so well, because they already knew, they saw things differently. And I think that's the win. So often we see it as antagonistic or what's different. They were celebrating their differences and finding the opportunity to collaborate. And so we start to layer in the differences that we have. Some of us speak up quickly in a group conversation. Some of us sit back and wait. Some of us are dreamers and idealists, visionaries. Some of us are practical realists, thinking about what's right here in front of us. Some of us lean people first. Some of us lean logic first. And so the 5 voices sit at the intersection of each of those dynamics and help us to realize, hey, number one, not everybody thinks like me, which not only helps you to recognize what's different about each person, but you actually start to realize, oh, there's kind of a unique gift and skill set that is inherent in me that I thought, well, doesn't everybody know that? And that's not actually the case. So when we realize those strengths, it takes us into communication styles, how we problem solve, and even my favorite part of this that's been most insightful for me, I think, is what happens to us under stress. How does that stress reaction prompt us to communicate, react, trying to solve problems when we're stressed? All of this is so illuminating. And so we often, we joke that a one-time retreat probably isn't going to move the needle as much as you hope it will. But the layer upon layer experience of learning more about yourself, learning more about your team and the people around you, you'll get to a place where you really know a lot about your team and can lean on each other.
Well, yeah, that's what's interesting for me, to the point you made. Yes, we did this last September, but now you've just prompted me to remind Courtney and the individuals planning our retreat for this September that in order to keep reinforcing this, we probably need to exercise this muscle again, perhaps revisit those results. But what I'm pleased to say is we still may do that with the leadership team, but we're actually doing the 5 Voices exercise company-wide this September. So, because I think that informs leadership decisions as well. Again, going back to care for employees as a part of leadership, but where does that care show up? And for me, it is really we're all here to do a job, but is there a way for me to communicate with that person or delegate work in a manner that I know they're motivated and engaged because I better understand their 5 voices? Or if the company's making a big change decision, I'm already anticipating some people who will celebrate the change and other people that might have a lot of questions. And how much do I need to head those questions off at the past? Or how much do I need to diffuse worry for the guardians, mostly? I mean, they're the ones that worry, let's face it. So I'm really excited for us to take that next step. My question for you is, since you do leadership development and culture work, and as far as I am concerned, an expert in 5 voices and where it shows up as a benefit for a company, if you're a newer business, let's say you've been operating 5 years, I don't know, you've been successful enough to get yourself to about 15 employees, 5 to 15 employees, somewhere in there, and you're bothering to define those seats and who's successful in these seats, and not everybody sits on the executive team, and often in growing companies we all have to wear multiple hats. But what I'm curious about is the journey of building out your culture, and in turn where that shows up with your people ops, with your HR. What's been your experience in taking a committed leadership team who, let's just say, has already defined their values, and maybe they're not showing up everywhere they should, but they're on the map. They're starting to all row in the same direction according to these values. Where do you see the 5 voices exercising? Why do you see 5 voices intersecting with that to further define their culture? Where do you see that show up? Because a lot of what you decide on with culture will mean adjustments to your current or future people ops infrastructure, handbook, job descriptions, Compensation philosophy is something that's been interesting for us as of late, as we have clients writing compensation philosophy documents on the heels of this pay transparency law passing in Virginia, so that from the time they hire and throughout the time they're with a company, there's no surprises with pay raises. It's all, we tell you all about it up front, and that would be consistent with values. So that's just an example of kind of where we're seeing people starting to connect the dots. But what's been your journey with, we're now interjecting 5 voices to take culture to the next level. What's your experience in that exercise?
Well, you think about each of the 5 voices. A lot of times, not always, and you're an example. Our friend Todd over at TK Promotions is another great example. Hey, Todd. Not every entrepreneur is a future-oriented voice, but a future-oriented voice, we would say, are the pioneers, the visionary trailblazers, the creatives, who are kind of idealists, scanning all of the opportunities to grow and improve. The connectors, who are the networkers and know everybody, they are the ones who tend to lean towards growth and future and opportunity. All 3 of them, almost exclusively, are resistant to compliance, resistant to documentation, resistant to putting things down, because they don't want to shortchange the growth opportunity. And so then you think back to our earlier conversation about, why are people frustrated with HR? Or, I was trying to be nice.
Hate it.
Your words. Why do people still hate
they
HR?
still hate it. It's fine.
The care and compliance are very nurture guardian dynamics. And so it's a team or a function kind of taking on one of the voices themselves. So you put that together and you start to think about the different dynamics. And say a team of 15 maybe they lean more future with a few nurturers in the mix and only one guardian at that point. Well, then they can start to value all 5 voices, even when they only have one guardian, and say, hey, you're probably right. Let's find our compromise, because we may not be able to do compliance strictly the guardian kind of way, but there's a middle ground here. There's an opportunity where we can create that culture where we're recognizing, identifying each of those dynamics and tendencies within our team, and where we can fill in gaps. You also start to recognize, and I think this was the case, if I remember with your team, your leadership team skewed, I don't remember which direction, but Courtney even filled, I think, a voice that wasn't represented on the rest of your team.
Here's what I could tell you. 2 of the 4 leader team meetings, including me, but not Courtney, present as guardians. But they're very different guardians. But if you think about it, at the heart of being HR trained all your life, guardian makes sense. I just happen to be the one that also wanted to be entrepreneurial and loves networking, so that helps me relate to the small business owners we work with, where I say, yeah, I get it. Compliance a bummer. Do I really want to be talking to you about risk mitigation all the time? No. And you even joked, I'm like, how often do you talk about handbooks? I'm like, 90% of the week. 'Cause there's no getting away from it. It's the heart of how you at least begin to define your people ops infrastructure, which weaves into your values and cultures. But yeah, it was an interesting exercise to see 2 guardians. But it's interesting, I'll tell you this, and I don't think they'll mind. They're now, since that exercise, they're now 2 guardians that will push back on one another. One of them will tell them you've gone, like one of them always says, we never had this conversation before, am I being too nitpicky? And the other guardian will say, yes or no, you are. But because they share that common language, it's almost like there's credibility in that dynamic for one of them to push back on the other. So like, me, the nurturer and connector, and the other one, a pioneer and a nurturer, we don't even have to get in on those that element of guardian conversation. Like we let them work it out. So it's actually created a nice synergy on our leader team, knowing these individual differences and where they show up. So,
well, in the way I
remember where Courtney fell. Do you remember? I could pull it up, but then I'd have to toggle off the screen.
Courtney's a pioneer like me. Different second voice, which gets to part of the uniqueness is not to put any person in a box to say this is you, but it's simply a framework of tendencies we all have tendencies. We all tend to do something in a particular way. And so the voices are helping us get to those tendencies. And we all have all 5 voices, just some of them come more naturally than others. And we see our growth opportunities. I'm constantly reminded, mostly at home, with my wife and 2 girls, of my non-nurturer tendencies and how I can improve on some of those.
Interesting.
So
I would say I over-nurture, almost to the point where I've had to become aware of the fact that, like, in the work world, Kim Sink on our team would often remind me that you can nurture, but clear is kind when it comes to coaching and developing employees, right? And so, as a nurturer, this is where I also relate to leaders, particularly the reluctant leader. I've been doing this for a long time. I still don't like having the hard conversations, but it is imperative of me as the leader and now the business owner to have those hard conversations. Because at the end of the day, my nurture instincts is what originally kicked in when I founded Inspiring HR. I'm a great HR professional, or at least I used to be before I had to get used to marketing and QuickBooks and everything else that has nothing to do with HR. But I always wanted a team. It was never always just a lifestyle business where it was just me. And I wanted a brand, I wanted a team, because leadership has always called to me in some fashion. So that's how we ended up here. Anything else you would like to share with everybody as we wrap up in terms of tips if they're considering the 5 voices?
Well, let me wrap with this example that I often use. If every voice is on your team, thriving and at its best, free to be the best version of themselves, understanding each other, then your creatives are going to see opportunities and threats long before anyone else. And the pioneer can translate those into a vision, and the connector can help assemble the right people, the right resources on the team. The guardian can help make sure you actually bring that, not just an idea to life, but that you actually finish it step by step. And the nurturer will make sure everybody still gets along at the end of the day. That's the best of the 5 in the simplest version I can give you. But we see that play out day in and day out in our clients.
Okay, I already know what I'm clipping out of this right out of the start, and it's your close. So I'll just tell my video editor now, when you go to edit this video, clip that. I want that. I want to show that to everybody, because this is what we get out of these videos, is where am I going to learn the most impactful, simplified things in the shortest period of time, and that is powerful. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me. It's always such a pleasure spending time with you. We have to have lunch again sometime soon. I will send you an email to set it up. Where can people reach you if they want to learn more?
The best is find me on LinkedIn. That'll point you in all the right directions. I also write at aaronlee.co is my writing website. You
do have the Leaders Rising website as well. Is it just it's leadersrisingnetwork.com, correct?
That's our website. Yep.
Okay, good. Awesome.
You'll find links to my 2 books, third one upcoming, and the 2 podcasts on all those platforms.
Yes, which I was a part of, which I really enjoyed. So what's the name of the podcast?
The New Generation Leader podcast is interesting leaders and insightful local leaders, sports leaders, a variety of leaders on that one. And then the Leaders Rising podcast is our company podcast with CEOs and executives.
You got me on the sports thing. I don't know if you can see the caricature behind me, but I'm crazy for Syracuse basketball.
Okay.
So if you and I want to reconnect for another recording during March Madness, I don't work during March Madness, but I'm happy to chat basketball with you when the time comes.
Well, I got to be honest. There was one buzz. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, but I did look to see why my phone buzzed, and it was
why did it buzz?
It was the Orioles score, which you can see from my photos. The Orioles backgrounds.
Yes. Well, then Jennifer Archer, the primary guardian on our team, would probably love to chat with you because she is forever a Chicago Cubs fan.
Okay.
And I am happy to report that, yes, I was employing her, had the pleasure of working with her, still have had the pleasure of working with her through the Cubs winning a championship. So that's been fun. So
I'm still waiting on the Orioles championship.
Yeah, I don't know if you know. Bob and I lived in Baltimore for a period of time. That's why I'm legally obligated to tell you I root for the Ravens.
Okay.
I'm legally obligated by marriage to tell you I root for the Ravens, but actually, in reality, I do root for the Ravens. So, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Mindy. You too.
All right. Bye bye.